The first 4 games of the New York Giants season has not started off the way most Giants fans would have wanted it. However, we've seen some glimmers of hope. We've seen talent. The question then becomes, what is this team supposed to be as a whole? How good of a job has the GM done at constructing a squad that can not only compete in the NFC East, but also compete for a playoff spot and ultimately getting the Giants back to a championship caliber team? We'll talk about this and more with Sal, who's not a content creator, right now. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, and I have a giant issue. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of A Giant Issue. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, New York Giants on SI. That's where you want to go for all of your New York Giants news and information. I appreciate all of you who come over here to the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and follow the podcast. Really do appreciate it. We're still trying to get to 2,000, so let's keep that thing moving. But right now, I am joined by Sal, who is not a content creator, who has been gracious enough to come on and talk a little bit about the construction of the Giants. Really get into, especially into the draft and where the New York Giants have gone right and gone wrong. What he still thinks they need to see and just chop it up. Sal, I really do appreciate you joining me, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Coach Gene. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're down here in Georgia. A couple people still without power, but for the most part, things are kind of back to normal down here. It was good. It's a blessing. That I'm good and some people, the people that I know are good, but there were some other people who are not as fortunate and they're trying to put their lives back together. So we send all of our thoughts and prayers out to them. Not to make it solemn or anything, because obviously sometimes when you're talking about the Giants, it can feel like a funeral,
It's depressing
unfortunately. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you Giants fans, man, y'all don't know how to celebrate nothing. Like, it'll be one good thing and y'all will immediately be talking about the bad thing. I'm like, wait a minute. Let's celebrate the good thing first. But unfortunately, for me, I've said it. I think the Giants should be 3-1 right now. I think that the defense played well enough to win a game versus Washington, who we now can see is a good football team that has a legitimate offense and legitimate quarterback play. That they should feel confident about going forward. I think that they should have won the Thursday night game versus Dallas, but you can't kick 5 field goals versus a team that has explosive elements and they score touchdowns. Your 5 field goals equates to 15 points. Their 2 touchdowns equate to 14. The math ain't mathing. So with that, we're here at a place where there's a lot of questions about personnel. There's a lot of questions about the decisions on personnel. And it all comes back to Joe Schoen, who, in my opinion, probably made the worst move that any team could make by letting them come in there and do this Giants hard knocks, because in the Giants hard knocks, I could tell he didn't really care what anyone else was saying. Like, he had his own thought, his own track, his own way of going about this thing. And this is the vision of Joe Schoen. And now we're seeing that vision has got a few blind spots in it. So what do you think about what you've seen so far out of this regime and what they're doing to put talent on this team?
I had a lot of hope for Joe Schoen when he was hired. I think a lot of us did, coming off the heels. It was felt to be a failed period under Dave Gettleman. I've been very disappointed. I've been openly very critical of Joe Schoen. I'll be honest. It's my concerns with him started the minute he decided to hand over a big deal to Daniel Jones. Immediately, I questioned the man's sanity. I'll be honest. I thought, what, what are you doing? You didn't have to do any of this. I was one of a group of people who were kind of outcasted in the Giants community at the time, who said, "What do you mean you can't walk away from a young quarterback after you just won a playoff game?" And I think my thought process at the time was, and it hasn't changed, he didn't inherit the best situation of the roster, but he inherited some good veterans. The team had a long way to go. And I think that they maxed out through coaching every drop of production they could out of those veterans in 2022. A lot of things went right. Saquon Barkley had one of his best years. A lot of the guys on defense stayed healthy. And and Daniel Jones played well, but the roster had a long way to go, and I just didn't think it was the right place to be to pay that kind of money to a rebuilding roster, which he immediately felt was not a rebuilding roster. Right there, my eye opened, and I thought, wow, he really thinks this is a competitor. Okay, maybe he's right. And then from there, I think there was move after move, starting with some of the money he spent in free agency, all the way up to the draft choices he's made that have really hurt this team. Specifically the draft. I've been very critical of his draft pick. So, I don't know where you want to begin, but I think you have to look at the 2022 draft class and just the repercussions of that class cannot be overstated. They just really can't be. I don't think anybody can fault. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is a very good player. I think he gets a bad rap from Giants fans. But is he producing at like number 5 overall production? That's questionable, but he's still a good player. I wouldn't blame anybody for taking Kayvon Thibodeau. I was excited when he took him. And the same thing for Evan Neal. I thought, it was a no-brainer in my mind. I thought to take him. So I'm not going to blame them for taking him. How they developed him, different story. But after that, the picks got very questionable on day 2. And that was the first clue I thought that there were maybe some strange choices being made. Wan'Dale's a very good player. They took him in the second round, and I think a limited wide receiver just because of his length, but a very good football player. But the third round picks are just brutal. Josh is
so
but you can
before you go there, I
Yeah.
want to go back. I want to go back to the first round draft pick, because here's where I thought the initial issue was made. The initial problem was made. You've got a playoff team, regardless of how you got there, right? You've got a playoff team, regardless of how you got there. You decide that you're going to stick with Daniel Jones, right? Or excuse me, not stick with Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones is your quarterback, right? So you know that you need weapons to put around Jones. You know you've got to improve these things. You have 2 premium first round picks. You don't trade either one of them. You're taking over.
Well, that draft happened before. That draft happened before the playoff run, though. The Kayvon Evan Neal draft was before.
And that's what and excuse me, yes, you're right, because it wasn't the Thibodeau draft was the draft class that went to the playoffs.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, but my point is, you've got Daniel Jones, and I misspoke about it. You got Daniel Jones. You're locked into Daniel Jones because he's on a rookie deal, whatever, right? But you've already not picked up his option. So you said to yourself, this guy is not good enough for us to spend, because I think that goes, like, we don't give that enough credence. You already made the decision that this guy was not good enough to invest a 5th-year option in before he played the 2022 season. But you've got him for the 2022 season. So why not? We're not a playoff team yet. Let's try to make sure that we get the most out of these draft picks. People say a lot of things about David Gettleman, but the one thing that you can say is when David Gettleman left, he didn't leave the cupboard dry. He left a lot of draft capital for you to be able to play with.
11.
And you don't trade any one of these first round picks and flip it and do essentially what Chicago did, which is take the first round pick, drop back, flip it into another first round pick next year. So now you have 2 first round picks the next year as well in 2023. No, you just say we're going to stand put and we're going to take these players. Now, for all of and I agree with you on the Thibodeau thing, where I think Giants fans give him flack, but I've just decided that Giants fans, for as knowledgeable as they are about football, they don't understand that there's more to life than just sacks. And it's the reason that Giants fans have run off a lot of really good football players that just didn't get a lot of sacks, right? The idea behind Golden was that Golden wasn't a double-digit sack guy, right? And meanwhile, he was 5 to 7 every year. Crowder wasn't a sack guy, but Crowder was just a football player. One year he had a bunch of tackles. He was versatile, but he's not a sack guy. You know, he's not going to get you 10, 12. Both of those guys went on to still have really good careers. And then you think about Leonard Williams. And when Leonard Williams came over from the Jets, the knock on Leonard Williams the entire time he was with the Giants was that he wasn't worth the money because he wasn't getting sacks. But Leonard Williams is one of the best defensive tackles or defensive linemen, period, in football because of his versatility and all of the different things that he can do. So now you're sitting here in the draft and you've got 2 premium picks. You don't do anything to like maximize that draft capital. You take Kayvon Thibodeaux. Last year, Kayvon Thibodeaux, of the 3 defensive linemen that were taken high in the draft that year, he had the best year last year, sacks wise. But we all know that that's not really even his thing. Like that's not his bag. So to hold him to a standard that, oh, well, he's supposed to be this sack wizard while you're watching the defensive coordinator drop him into coverage, that's not on him. It's not his fault that during third downs, which are downs that people normally go hunt for the quarterback, he's playing out in coverage. Like, that's not his fault. So I look at that draft pick and go, well, he's doing what he's being asked to do. And what else can you really ask for him? The Evan Neal thing is interesting because when he was drafted, I said that he was the worst pass blocker of all 3 of those tackles that was in the draft. He was the best run blocker. I said I feel like he could eventually be a Pro Bowl caliber tackle, but he could be an all-pro caliber guard. They put him at right tackle. We've seen what's happened. Regardless of what people think about him, I still think he's way too young to be trying to give up on, especially when you see that our interior offensive line can't run block to save their lives. They're pass protection guys. They're twinkle toes, right? They're there to keep and shield the quarterback. They're not moving anybody off the ball, and he's a guy who can move somebody off the ball. So, but that's a different story. When you get into day 2, is when I contend that this is the disastrous draft of all drafts. Like day 2, even starting with Wan'Dale Robinson, whom I like a lot.
Yeah.
Wan'Dale Robinson was a guy who had injury issues in college, came right into the pros and had injury issues.
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge Wan'Dale fan when I thought we could probably get him in the 3rd round or maybe the 4th round. And, if I recall, the Giants traded back twice with that 2nd round pick. And I thought to myself, okay, Joe Schoen he's trying to build a roster. He's doing good. At this point, you got Kayvon. I was ecstatic about Kayvon's pick. I'm with you about like trying to trade. I don't know if a trade was available. It was a bad QB class, so maybe that affected it. But I'm with you on Evan Neal. We can get to that later. But when he started trading those picks, I felt good. He trades down, and when he took Wan'Dale at 43, I think that was the first time you're like, that's a little high for Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a good player, and I think that's kind of how it played out, right? He's a good football player. There's nothing wrong with Wan'Dale Robinson, but his ceiling is limited, being a slot receiver only with small arms, so you can't really play on the outside. So he's got to be pigeonholed into this gadget, maybe not just a gadget, but just a very kind of specific low volume, like high volume, low explosive play kind of style, which is fine. But at 43, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's not Tyreek Hill. Like, right. That's the problem. He's not Tyreek Hill. If you're not going to have that level of explosiveness and acceleration that Tyreek Hill or some of the guys like that have, or you're not going to be built in a way that allows you to just be able to like run over or run through people, then it really does put a cap on what your production can be. And right now we're seeing that his production is, I can catch a lot of passes, but for not a lot of yards.
Right, exactly. I mean, and obviously people will always talk about George Pickens, who was there. Like, why didn't you take George Pickens? I mean, George Pickens already had 1,000 yards. I mean, for all his problems in college, in the NFL, there are definitely issues with George Pickens. I mean, you're from Georgia, George Pickens has had his share of issues, but relatively minor compared to the fact that he's generally healthy, he's available, and he produces. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters, right? And he's a 1,000-yard receiver. He's an X. He's a 1. You didn't take him, fine. But the third round was really it was that's when it was really kind of disastrous. So pick 67 overall. You take Josh Ezeudu at I don't know what your thoughts on Josh Ezeudu were coming into the draft. My view on him was he was kind of like a day 3 guy, developmental guard out of North Carolina. I thought he went a little early there. And then Cordell Flott at 81, which was really kind of like head spinning at that point. So, I mean, I don't know. What were your thoughts on those picks? When they took those guys, that's when I really started getting worried. I was like, what's going on here?
So in full disclosure, I liked the Ezeudu pick because I thought he was going to play guard. Like, I thought he was going to be a guard, and I said, okay, an athletic guard who moves people off the ball.
Yeah.
You put him next to Andrew Thomas, and you've got a side of guys who can move people off the ball because you've got Saquon back there. And then what happened is they never played him at guard. They put him at tackle, and they're wondering why people are out here wondering, like, oh my gosh, he's so awful at tackle, such a bad draft pick. They never drafted him to play tackle. They drafted him to play guard, and then somebody somewhere kept saying, oh, let's just put him at tackle. And I'm like, no. Like, that's the issue, is when you draft somebody for one reason and then you do something else, like you're setting them up for failure. And I think Ezeudu has been set up for failure to no fault of his own. He's not going to tell them, hey, no, I shouldn't be playing tackle. I should be playing guard. He's trying to keep a job. So he's going to do whatever they tell him to do. But that's not where his ceiling was the highest. They knew it, and then they changed course somewhere along the line. Cordell Flott was one of those where I went, well, why are you taking luxury picks? I felt the same way about Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, why are you taking luxury picks? The Giants need like cornerstone, like tried and true picks.
They needed good football players, and they were taking athletic projects. Yeah,
they don't need luxuries. They don't have the luxury of rolling the dice. And I felt like that's what it was with Wan'Dale, and that's what it was with Cordell Flott. Now, again, I think that Cordell Flott has comported himself well with what he's been asked to do, but he's been in the slot. Then they put him outside first. Then they put him into the slot. Then they were going to put him back outside, and now they're putting him back in the slot because Drew Phillips is down. Like, you're giving him no continuity. You're setting him up for failure. And that third round for me was guys that they took that now in year 3 have just been set up to not look the greatest.
I agree. I mean, stop with Ezeudu for a second. The line was the issue for years until this year with the Giants, right? And
it's still an issue, low key.
It is. And you mentioned why the run blocking is different.
The issue is different now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year they getting a little ahead of ourselves, but they definitely erred on. We just got to keep Daniel Jones upright, and that's all we care about right now. And I kind of understand why they did it, but anyway, that aside, Ezeudu was a developmental guard prospect. I think that's a fair way to put it, right? That he was a kid who played a lot of positions at North Carolina. He had a lot of learning to do, a lot of physical development, and you took him, and I thought there's no way Josh Ezeudu is starting right away. You're probably going to let him work on his craft for a while, but if you're going to start him, you're going to leave him out there to learn. And they started him, if I recall, right away. I think he was their starting left guard coming out of camp that year. And so, and maybe they were doing the rotation thing. I don't remember, but
I think they were doing a rotation thing. He was getting minutes though.
Yeah, he was getting a decent number of reps. I think he was on the play for like one of Saquon's. He might have been on for one of the touchdowns against Tennessee in that first game.
Could have been, definitely.
Yeah, sure. But he was playing, and I thought, okay, there were enough glimpses that he was doing good things that, if you're truly rebuilding, you took this kid to develop him, leave him out there. Do not let him come off the field. He's going to make mistakes. It's going to look bad at times, but he's going to play next to Andrew Thomas. He's going to get better week after week. Just leave him out there. And then they just pulled the plug. If I recall, he got hurt, or maybe they pulled the plug on him. And I don't even remember how it happened. Then they just, like you said, they gave up on the guard experiment. put him at tackle, which was destined for failure. Starting left tackle against the 49ers, week 3 of last year against that defensive line was bananas. Just it was a mess, and they've definitely ruined the kid's chances of being anything useful for the Giants. And the same thing with Flott. It was a luxury pick. Like you said, he was 20 years old when we drafted him. Skinny as a rail, needed time to develop. Was a decent slot corner at LSU, but definitely probably. I mean, I think when you talk to LSU fans, I think most of them felt he should have gone back for one more year. Came out in the draft. Okay, you should let him develop and let him stick at nickel, and they didn't for whatever reason. He's doing okay, but was that the best use of its day 2 pick? I don't think so. And all of a sudden you have now you basically have a hole at guard, you have a hole at cornerback, and you've used 2 premium assets on them right off the bat, and they're already holes that you guaranteed would be holes with how you treated those players. It was almost a foregone conclusion they would be with how the coaching staff decided to use these guys after Joe Schoen took them. And then you can just keep going. Like you go to the next round, like the 4th round, they took Dane Belton. Again, a safety who showed some talent, has good ball skills. He's not like an every down, every package type of safety necessarily in every defense, but he showed something. He was picking off balls. He has a nose for the football, looks like a decent football player. Take him right off the field. And I know he missed some run fits, but they took him right off the field, and it took him 2 years to work his way back into the rotation. And all of a sudden, and there's multiple safeties along the way. We can get to safety, and then you take Daniel Bellinger, who, if there's one player who I think has been wronged more than anybody by this coaching staff, I don't know what's going on. I think it's actually Daniel Bellinger, who was a good tight end. He was a good pick. It was actually a good pick by Joe Schoen, in my opinion. Starting quality tight end, nothing spectacular, but he can block. He can be a good receiver for your quarterback, a good safety blanket. Reliable, doesn't drop anything. Got hurt again when his eye got gouged out. But all of a sudden, like after year 1, the guy's just a forgotten person. He's getting less than 20% of the reps now. So, I mean, I can go on and on, but I mean, what are your thoughts on like how they handle this stuff?
So my issue with the draft is you let Evan Ingram go, right?
Yep.
You let Evan Ingram go for a ham sandwich. You just let him go. He goes and signs with the Jaguars for not a lot of money, right? I know because this is the thing that always gets me upset with Giants fans. Well, they were in cap hell. Oh, well, Gettleman did this and Gettleman did that. You know how many NFL teams are in cap hell every year?
Yeah, like half.
Over half.
Yeah.
Over half of the teams are all, and you know what's the similarity between all of them? They're good because the good teams have to continually manipulate the salary cap in order to continue to get good players. So you have to be willing to manipulate and transform and make and move and shake in order to keep these guys that are going to be good. And Evan Ingram, for all of the stuff that people would talk, Evan Ingram is a guy that you don't give up on in his mid-20s. He's a tight end that has all of the talent in the world. You don't give up on a guy like that in the mid-20s. You find a way to bring him back. And now guess what you don't need to do in the 4th round? You don't need to take a Daniel Bellinger. And then guess what you don't need to do the next year? You don't need to trade for Darren Waller. And then guess what you don't need to do the year after that? You don't need to use the exact same 4th round pick to bring in another project tight end that's not even the best tight end on his team. Right? And so I'm sitting here and going, tight end might be, like, regardless of what was done to Daniel Bellinger, and I agree with you, like, they really just kind of screwed him. Like, he had a good rookie year. He had potential even in the 2nd year when you brought in when you brought in Waller.
Yeah.
For him to not just go into year 3 as the unquestioned starter as tight end, and he's got to watch Theo Johnson out here running around like he doesn't know what he's doing, dropping balls, missing blocks. I'm like, what are they doing? I just don't get that at all. It looks like a joke out there at tight end. Like, and I played the position. So, like, that's what really irks me. I know what it should look like. It should not look like what Theo Johnson is doing out there. And somewhere along the lines, Daniel Bellinger forgot how to block. Like, He forgot how to block. So now they're putting offensive linemen in to try to last year they were putting offensive linemen in to try to block at tight end because they didn't like what they were getting out of Daniel Bellinger as a blocker. And it's like, what are we doing? I'm just shocked that I'm looking at these 2 tight end sets this year that they keep rolling out there that they're not even using. They're not even utilizing the 2 tight ends in the passing game. You're throwing it to 2 people. Almost 70% of the targets are going to 2 people. I know I'm jumping around, but I'm ADHD, and that's what happens.
No, but it's relevant because I think what you're getting at, and I agree, is none of it makes sense. None of it adds up to a cohesive roster. And I think that's been the point, right? I mean, we don't have to go through every single pick, but just on the tight end front, like I know you had my buddy Authentic on a while back, and he and I talk about this all the time. Like, how are you going to keep doing this? You keep using the same pick every year on a tight end, and you still don't have one that you believe in or know how to use, yet you let a guy like Evan Ingram walk for nothing. And you're right, teams are always in capital. The Giants are $12 million over the cap when Joe Schoen took over. A lot of teams are about 10, 12 million over the cap when the season begins, and they make maneuvers. And I'm not going to defend Dave Gettleman. So I thought he was a very, very bad GM. But to your point, he left some draft assets. He left some players. I thought it was going to get better. And to my shock, I'm going to make the argument that I think things have gotten worse, not better, but actually worse. And I know there are a lot of Giant fans who are going to think that's actually like sacrilege to say, but this is just we might as well jump around. I mean, you might have noticed I put out a tweet this morning just thinking about it, about the state of what Joe Schoen has done, and it was about what he did with players he inherited and what he's used, and I probably underestimated, but I said Dave Gettleman was an atrocious GM. That's my opinion. And he only left Schoen 7 good players. It's probably 8 because I forgot to include Sterling Shepard on this list. But Saquon, Julian Love, Dexter Lawrence, Darius Slayton, A.T., Xavier McKinney, and Azeez Ojulari. And what Joe Schoen did with that is pay Daniel Jones a lot of money, and he let Julian Love had a great year that first year, played every snap at safety, and was a reliable leader and a captain on the team, and was part of, like, in my opinion, like, you look for the culture building solutions of players. He was one of those guys. He wasn't expensive. I think he was a captain, if I'm not mistaken, that year in 2022. And you let him walk for $6 million, something like that, right, to Seattle. Just 100% of your snaps at safety on your and you just let him walk for nothing. Saquon, that's a whole other discussion. I was in the camp of just let Saquon and Jones go after 2022 for the full rebuild. But my other thought process was, like, if you have to pay one of them, pay the one who's actually good at football, right? And just pay Saquon and let Jones go. It didn't make sense to me. But you keep Jones, you lose Saquon after a year, and you didn't get anything for it. Dex, they paid. Good. Darius Slayton, they paid. He's a good player. He deserves the money he got. He probably deserves more, to be honest.
I'm about to say they're definitely lowballing him, but it's cool.
Yeah. And by the way, they're going to lose him for nothing also. Wait for that to happen, right? They're absolutely going to lose him for nothing. Yeah. They're not going to trade him when they could get some value out of him. They're going to hold on to him and watch him leave. Andrew Thomas, they paid him. Good. Xavier McKinney, a year after Julian Love takes 100% of the snaps at safety, Xavier McKinney takes 100% of the snaps at safety and looks like an all-pro, even though he didn't get the honors. He clearly looked like a top 10 safety in the NFL, probably a top 5 safety. If you didn't trade him at the trade deadline when you were 2-6 and your team was dead already, and you basically had a hall pass because you came off a playoff season, knowing David Mulugeta is his agent, how do you walk into the offseason without a plan for Xavier McKinney? How do you walk in and just let him just leave? Just a player of that caliber, just leave. You don't tag him. You don't work out a deal with him. He just walks. How is that okay for any organization trying to build? How do you lose players like this? Azeez Ojulari is here too. He's having a good year. He's been relegated. He's still having a good year. Guess what he's going to do? He's probably just going to walk, and go to another team. So this is, how do you build a roster when the actual good players you inherited are guys you just let leave. You don't trade them for anything. You don't you just let them go. You get nothing for it. And now they're really good players on another team. Julian Love looks like a Pro Bowler. He looks like almost an all-pro right now. Obviously Saquon is going crazy. That's its own story.
I mean, Zay's leading the league in interceptions before
right.
week 4. Like it's bad.
And you got nothing for him.
But you're letting them off the hook easy. And I'm not here to say, and people who know and listen to me know that I have actually defended David Gettleman more, but not because I think he's done a great job, but because I don't think he did as poor a job as other people think he did. Let me just run off some of these names, right?
Sure.
You come in, you alienate Kadarius Toney.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can't like nobody's ever going to convince me of anything different. Like you came in, Kadarius Toney ain't your type of hype. You brought in another dude to do exactly what Kadarius Toney does. That tells me you never wanted him in the first place. You weren't trying to make it work, right? Now, in hindsight, do we go on and see Kadarius Toney got some issues? Yeah, cool, right? Cool. All right, that's fine. Look at the fact that when you got rid of defensive players, right? Because this was the issue. Tay Crowder had 130 tackles on that defense the year before in 2021. They let him just walk. I don't think they let him just walk that year. He came back, I think, a year and then had a lower year because they changed a whole bunch of stuff around, and then he walked. Logan Ryan, he was out of there. Remember, it was Logan Ryan and Xavier McKinney in 2021. Julian Love was still making his transition from cornerback to safety at that time, right?
Yep.
So, and here's where I look at it and go, oh, you guys just didn't want guys that weren't your dudes.
Yeah.
Logan Ryan out. Julian Love out. James Bradbury out. Xavier McKinney out. Lorenzo Carter out. Leonard Williams out. Like what do we like? That's a lot of talent.
At least they got back good return on Leo. That's the one player they got good trade return on. But what
did they turn that into? I'll wait.
They turned that into Tyler Nubin, and I know, and that's the thing about trading with draft picks.
Why do you have to keep drafting all of these
I agree with,
safeties?
When you keep leaving, all right? No, you're right. And the fifth round pick they'll get this year. No, I'm with you. You can't build a roster doing this hamster wheel approach where you're just running as fast as you possibly can and you're going nowhere because you're letting really good players leave your building. And then instead of, it's okay to let players go. I have no problem with that. I was very much pro let it go, trade the guys while you can, and rebuild the roster, save your money, rebuild it up. But the second you pay Daniel Jones, you sent a signal that we're ready to compete. How can you do that in one vein and let a player like Julian Love go? It makes no sense to let him walk at that point.
Letting young players go is what I don't like. You're not like James Bradbury. Okay, I can get it. Right? He's older. You need the cap space. You don't necessarily want him to leave, but we got to do something. This one's going to hurt. All right, we're going to release him. He walks right over to the Eagles, all pro year, right? He walked right over to the Eagles, had an all pro year.
All right, goes to Super Bowl. Yeah.
In the year that you make the playoffs, he goes and makes the Super Bowl with the team right down the street.
Gets a pick on Daniel Jones in the first quarter of the playoff game.
You can't write the script. You can't even write the script. But what I mean by it is that when you look at the Logan Ryan and then the Love and then the McKinney, what it tells me is that you just don't want anybody associated with somebody else to be responsible for the winning on this team so that you can take all the credit for it. Now, cool. I'm with you. Do that. Why'd you sign Daniel Jones?